The world tilted on its axis the moment my grandfather spoke those words. I was cradling my newborn daughter, basking in the fragile peace of new motherhood, when he pierced through the bubble with a casualness that felt like a physical blow. "I gave you a car, right?" he asked, his eyes narrowed not at the precious life in my arms, but at some invisible ledger in his mind. The air thickened, the birdsong faded, and a cold dread seeped into my bones because I knew, instinctively, that this wasn't about gratitude or generosity. This was about control, about uncovering a truth I wasn't ready to face, but that had been lurking in the shadows of my life for far too long. They thought I was some easy pushover. They were very wrong. If you cherish the bond you share with your brother, subscribe now. My grandfather's follow-up question was a punch to the gut, each word laced with an accusation I couldn't yet comprehend. He didn't chide me for being ungrateful, for not acknowledging his supposed gift. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, and asked, "Who's been signing your name, Amelia?" The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as the implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. It wasn't just about the car, not anymore. It was about something far more insidious, a violation of my very identity. The car was merely a symptom, a glaring red flag in a landscape of deceit. My family, the people who were supposed to love and protect me, had apparently been living my life on paper, forging my signature, making decisions without my consent, weaving a web of lies that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew. My husband, bless his trusting heart, had been led to believe I was unstable, that I couldn't manage my own affairs. They had painted me as someone I wasn't, a damsel in distress needing their constant intervention, all while systematically stripping away my autonomy. They assumed I was weak. That was their fatal mistake. The tendrils of their manipulation stretched back years, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A missed bill here, a forgotten appointment there, conveniently taken care of by a well-meaning relative. Each act, seemingly innocuous on its own, now formed a disturbing pattern, a deliberate erosion of my independence. There were whispers, too, hushed conversations that ceased abruptly when I entered the room, concerned glances exchanged over family dinners. I had dismissed them as mere anxieties, overprotective tendencies magnified by my youth and inexperience. Now, I saw them for what they truly were, calculated maneuvers, designed to undermine my confidence and keep me dependent on their guidance. They smiled in my face while stabbing me in the back. The weight of their betrayal was crushing, a leaden cloak settling over my shoulders, stealing my breath. How could the people I loved most, the ones I trusted implicitly, inflict such profound damage? The pain was a raw, festering wound, a gaping hole where faith and security had once resided. I looked down at my daughter, her innocent face a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped my world. I vowed, in that moment, that she would never experience such violation, such blatant disregard for her autonomy. I would protect her from the very forces that had sought to dismantle me, even if those forces were my own family. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They believed they had total control. The person I trusted most was one of them. The revelation sent me spiraling. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Every creak of the house, every shadow in the hallway, morphed into a sinister reminder of their betrayal. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of the past, reinterpreting seemingly innocent gestures through the lens of their deception. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating my spirit, poisoning my joy. I tried talking to my husband, carefully broaching the subject of my grandfather's question, the unease that had settled in my heart. But he brushed it off, attributing it to my postpartum hormones, assuring me that my family only wanted what was best for me. His unwavering faith in them was a dagger twisting in my gut. He was blind, completely oblivious to the machinations that had been carefully orchestrated around us. I felt utterly alone, trapped in a gilded cage of their making. Every smile from my family felt like a lie. I attempted to regain control, starting with the car. I marched into the DMV, armed with my ID and registration, determined to transfer the title into my name, to sever the last remaining tie to their supposed generosity. But the clerk, after a series of clicks on her computer, informed me that I couldn't. There was a lien on the vehicle, a loan I supposedly co-signed with my grandfather. My signature, of course, was a forgery. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about a car, it was about financial manipulation, about binding me to them through fabricated debt. I tried to argue, to explain the situation, but the clerk simply shrugged, citing protocol and advising me to seek legal counsel. I left the DMV defeated, the weight of their control pressing down on me with renewed force. They had anticipated my every move, erecting barriers to prevent me from reclaiming my autonomy. Desperate, I sought solace in old family photographs, hoping to find some shred of evidence that I had misjudged them, that their actions stemmed from love, however misguided. But instead, I found more questions, more inconsistencies. Dates that didn't align, signatures that didn't quite match, subtle manipulations of reality captured in frozen moments. My childhood, once a tapestry of fond memories, was now riddled with doubt, tainted by the suspicion that I had been a pawn in their game from the very beginning. I started documenting everything, every interaction, every conversation, meticulously recording their words and actions, searching for a pattern, a weakness, anything I could use to dismantle their carefully constructed facade. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, that they would stop at nothing to maintain their control, but I refused to be silenced. The tension at family gatherings became unbearable. Every shared meal, every forced smile, was a minefield of unspoken accusations and simmering resentment. I could feel their eyes on me, scrutinizing my every move, gauging my level of awareness. They subtly increased their efforts to undermine me, questioning my parenting decisions, criticizing my career aspirations, subtly reminding me of my supposed dependence on their support. My husband, still blissfully unaware of their true nature, grew increasingly frustrated with my paranoia, accusing me of creating unnecessary drama. The isolation deepened, the chasm between us widening with each passing day. I began to question my own sanity. Was I truly seeing things as they were, or was I succumbing to some elaborate delusion? They were slowly driving me insane. One evening, while rummaging through my grandfather's study, searching for any concrete evidence of their deceit, I stumbled upon a locked drawer. My heart pounded in my chest as I carefully pried it open, revealing a treasure trove of documents, forged legal papers, falsified medical records, and a meticulously detailed ledger outlining their financial control over my life. The ledger contained sums of money that were moved between accounts, and it showed how they had created the narrative that I was incompetent. It was all there, in black and white, the irrefutable proof of their betrayal. But as I reached for my phone to document my discovery, I heard a voice behind me. It was my grandfather. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I had always associated with him. He knew. The game was up. The air in the study crackled with unspoken threats, the silence amplifying the frantic thumping of my heart. My grandfather's face, once a source of comfort and security, was now a mask of cold calculation. He didn't yell, didn't raise his voice. His calm demeanor was far more terrifying than any outburst could have been. He simply said, "I see you've found what you weren't supposed to." Those words, laced with a chilling finality, sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. I knew, in that instant, that I had underestimated them, that their control extended far beyond forged signatures and financial manipulations. This was about power, about maintaining their dominance at any cost. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in on me, trapping me in their web of deceit. My vision blurred, the edges of the room fading into a hazy darkness. I gripped the edge of the desk, fighting to maintain my composure, to prevent myself from collapsing under the weight of their betrayal. He took a step closer, his shadow looming over me, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly afraid. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of books that crashed to the floor with a deafening thud. He didn't reach out to help me, didn't offer a word of comfort. He simply stood there, watching me struggle, his eyes filled with a chilling detachment. "You should have trusted us, Amelia," he said, his voice a low, menacing whisper. "We were only trying to protect you." His words were a twisted mockery of love and concern, a blatant attempt to justify their actions, to paint themselves as benevolent guardians rather than manipulative puppeteers. The hypocrisy of it all was almost unbearable. They had systematically stripped away my autonomy, fabricated lies to undermine my confidence, and now they were claiming it was all for my own good. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted, a burning inferno that threatened to consume me. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms, as I fought to control the rage that threatened to explode. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to shatter the carefully constructed facade of their perfect family. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would only confirm their narrative, reinforce their belief that I was unstable and irrational. Instead, I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm, to think clearly. I knew I was in a dangerous situation, that my every move was being scrutinized. I had to play their game, at least for now. I forced a weak smile, trying to project an image of compliance, of submission. "I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "What is all this?" My grandfather chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that sent another shiver down my spine. "It's nothing you need to worry about, my dear," he said, reaching out to take my hand. "Just leave everything to us. We'll take care of it." I recoiled from his touch, instinctively pulling away from him. I couldn't bear to be near him, to feel his presence, knowing what he had done, what they had all done. "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I want to know the truth." The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of cold, hard determination. He knew he couldn't control me any longer. He had lost his grip. That night, after a tense and strained dinner, filled with veiled threats and forced pleasantries, I returned to my room, feeling more isolated than ever. My husband, still oblivious to the truth, dismissed my concerns as the product of an overactive imagination. I watched him sleep, his face serene and untroubled, and I felt a pang of resentment. How could he be so blind? How could he not see the darkness that had enveloped our lives? I knew I couldn't rely on him, that I had to fight this battle alone. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and made my way to the living room. I needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to expose their lies and reclaim my life. But as I sat there, staring out the window at the dark, silent street, a wave of despair washed over me. Their control was so pervasive, their influence so far-reaching. How could I possibly stand against them? They were powerful, wealthy, and ruthless. I was just one person, armed with nothing but the truth. The weight of their betrayal was crushing, stealing my breath, poisoning my spirit. I felt like I was drowning, sinking deeper and deeper into a sea of despair. I thought about my daughter, about the world she would inherit, the lies she would be forced to navigate. The thought of her falling victim to their manipulation, of her being subjected to the same control, filled me with a primal rage. And then, something shifted within me. A spark of defiance ignited in the darkness, a flicker of hope in the face of despair. I refused to be a victim. I refused to let them win. I would fight back, not with anger or violence, but with cunning and strategy. I would use their own weapons against them, turning their lies into truth, their manipulations into exposures. I would dismantle their empire, piece by piece, until nothing remained but the ruins of their deceit. It would take time, it would be dangerous, but I was willing to do whatever it took to protect my daughter, to reclaim my life, to expose their treachery. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it was now accompanied by a steely resolve, a cold determination that burned brighter than ever before. The game had changed. I was no longer playing by their rules. I was creating my own. They thought they had broken me. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I started to record everything. I smiled. I played their game. I acted the part of the naive, slightly scatterbrained young wife and mother, the one who needed constant guidance and support. I even apologized to my grandfather for snooping in his study, feigning remorse for my unfounded suspicions. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. I was meticulously documenting everything, every conversation, every interaction, building an arsenal of evidence that would ultimately expose their treachery. I purchased a miniature voice recorder, disguising it as a charm on my purse, ensuring that every word spoken in my presence was captured. I learned about forensic accounting, studying the intricacies of financial transactions, searching for discrepancies in their carefully crafted ledgers. I consulted with a lawyer, discreetly outlining my situation, seeking advice on how to protect myself and my daughter from their machinations. The lawyer recommended a private investigator, someone who could gather concrete evidence of their wrongdoing without alerting them to my intentions. I hesitated. Hiring an investigator was a risk, but it was a risk I had to take. The investigator, a woman named Sarah, was a godsend. She was discreet, professional, and incredibly resourceful. Within days, she had uncovered a network of shell corporations and offshore accounts, all linked to my grandfather and his associates. She discovered the forged signatures on the car loan, the falsified medical records, and the hidden clauses in the family trust that effectively stripped me of my inheritance. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable proof of their conspiracy. But Sarah also warned me that they were powerful and ruthless, that they wouldn't hesitate to use any means necessary to protect their interests. She advised me to be careful, to avoid any direct confrontation, and to focus on gathering as much evidence as possible before taking any decisive action. I took her advice to heart, meticulously following her instructions, playing the role of the unsuspecting victim, all while secretly building a case that would bring them down. There were close calls, moments when I thought they suspected something, when their eyes lingered on me a little too long, when their questions became a little too pointed. But I managed to maintain my composure, to deflect their suspicions with practiced ease. The tension was almost unbearable, a constant undercurrent of fear and anxiety that threatened to overwhelm me. One afternoon, while I was visiting my grandfather, he casually mentioned that he was updating his will, ensuring that my daughter would be well taken care of. The way he said it, with a knowing glint in his eyes, sent a chill down my spine. I knew what he was implying, that he was planning to further restrict my access to my own inheritance, to solidify their control over my daughter's future. I excused myself, claiming a sudden headache, and retreated to the bathroom. I locked the door, leaned against the sink, and closed my eyes, trying to control my racing heart. This was it. This was the breaking point. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act, and I had to act now. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, "It's time." The message was short, coded, but she knew exactly what it meant. We had a plan in place, a carefully orchestrated sequence of events that would expose their lies and dismantle their empire. It was a risky plan, fraught with potential dangers, but it was the only way to reclaim my life and protect my daughter. That evening, at dinner, I announced that I had decided to take a break from my marriage, that I needed some time to find myself. My husband was stunned, heartbroken, but I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. I couldn't risk him accidentally revealing our plan to my family. I packed a bag, kissed my daughter goodbye, and left the house, driving to a prearranged meeting point with Sarah. As I drove away, I glanced back at the house, at the warm, inviting glow of the windows, and I felt a pang of guilt. But I knew that I was doing the right thing, that I was fighting for my freedom, for my daughter's future. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, sharpening my senses, preparing me for the battle ahead. Sarah had arranged for a secure location, a hidden office space equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance technology. We spent the next few hours reviewing the evidence, finalizing our strategy, and preparing for the inevitable fallout. We knew that my family would retaliate, that they would try to discredit me, to silence me, to maintain their control. But we were ready. We had anticipated their every move, prepared for every contingency. The next morning, I contacted the local authorities, requesting a meeting with a detective specializing in financial crimes. I presented him with the evidence we had gathered, the forged documents, the falsified records, the hidden accounts. He was skeptical at first, but as he reviewed the material, his skepticism turned to shock, then to outrage. He promised to launch a full investigation, to bring those responsible to justice. The following day, I scheduled a press conference, inviting all the major news outlets in the area. I stood before the cameras, my voice trembling slightly, and I told my story. I revealed the truth about my family's betrayal, their financial manipulations, their attempts to control my life. I presented the evidence, the documents, the recordings, the testimony of witnesses. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of controversy and outrage. My family was stunned, caught completely off guard. They tried to deny the allegations, to discredit me, but it was too late. The truth was out there, and it couldn't be contained. I watched their carefully constructed facade crumble before my eyes. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable. The following days were a blur of legal proceedings, media appearances, and frantic damage control from my family's side. They hired high-powered lawyers, spun elaborate tales of my mental instability, and attempted to discredit my every word. But the evidence was too strong, the truth too undeniable. The authorities launched a full-scale investigation, uncovering a web of corruption that reached far beyond my immediate family. Politicians, business leaders, and even law enforcement officials were implicated in their schemes. The house of cards was collapsing, and everyone was scrambling to escape the wreckage. I watched it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction. They had underestimated me, believing that I was too weak, too naive, to challenge their authority. They had mistaken my silence for compliance, my fear for submission. But they had awakened a sleeping giant, and now they were paying the price. The public outcry was deafening, demanding justice and accountability. Protests erupted outside their homes, their businesses, their exclusive clubs. Their names were mud, their reputations tarnished beyond repair. They had lost everything, their wealth, their power, their respect. And I had won. But the victory felt hollow, incomplete. I knew that their downfall wouldn't erase the pain they had caused, the years of manipulation and deceit. But it was a start. It was a step towards reclaiming my life, towards creating a better future for my daughter. And it was a testament to the power of truth, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unwavering determination to fight for what is right. The detective called me in for a private meeting. He slid a file across the table. "We found something you need to see, Amelia." Inside were photographs. Graphic images. Evidence of my grandfather's dealings. Evidence that went far beyond financial crimes. Evidence of something truly monstrous. It was a ledger. Names. Dates. Amounts paid. And next to one particular entry, a single word, silenced. The room seemed to spin. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just about money. This was about people. People who had been hurt. People who had disappeared. People who had been made to vanish because they knew too much. The detective watched me carefully, his expression grim. "We believe your grandfather is responsible for the disappearances of several individuals over the past 2 decades. Individuals who posed a threat to his empire." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My grandfather. A man I had once idolized. A man I had trusted. A man who was capable of such unspeakable acts. The revelation was almost too much to bear. "We need your help, Amelia," the detective said, his voice firm. "We need you to help us build a case against him. We need you to help us bring him to justice." I nodded, my mind racing. I knew what I had to do. I had to set a trap. I had to lure him into a situation where he couldn't deny the truth, where he couldn't escape the consequences of his actions. It was a dangerous plan, but it was the only way to ensure that he would be held accountable for his crimes. I agreed to cooperate with the authorities, to wear a wire, to record our conversations. It was a risk, but I was willing to take it. I owed it to the victims, to their families, to myself. I called my grandfather, feigning a desire to reconcile. I told him that I had been wrong, that I had been manipulated by outside forces, that I wanted to put the past behind us and rebuild our relationship. He was skeptical at first, but eventually, he agreed to meet me for dinner. I chose a secluded restaurant, one with private dining rooms and limited security. It was the perfect setting for my trap. I arrived early, wearing a hidden microphone and a wire transmitter. I sat at the table, my heart pounding in my chest, and waited for him to arrive. When he finally walked through the door, I forced a smile, trying to appear calm and welcoming. We exchanged pleasantries, ordered drinks, and began to talk. I steered the conversation towards his business dealings, subtly probing for information about the missing individuals. He was cautious at first, evading my questions, deflecting my inquiries. But as the evening wore on, and the alcohol flowed freely, he began to loosen up, to relax his guard. He started to boast about his accomplishments, about his power, about his ability to control every aspect of his life. And then, he made a mistake. He alluded to the disappearances, hinting at his involvement, suggesting that he had taken steps to protect his interests. It was all caught on tape. Every word, every nuance, every incriminating detail. As he spoke, I felt a surge of anger, of disgust, of pure, unadulterated hatred. How could he be so callous, so arrogant, so devoid of any sense of morality? I wanted to lash out, to confront him with the truth, to scream at him for the pain he had caused. But I knew that I had to remain calm, to maintain my composure, to play my role until the very end. I continued to feign understanding, nodding along with his twisted narrative, encouraging him to reveal more. And he did. He confessed to ordering the removals of several individuals who had threatened to expose his crimes. He described the methods he had used, the lengths he had gone to cover his tracks. The details were gruesome, chilling, horrifying. I struggled to keep my emotions in check, to prevent myself from breaking down. But I knew that I had to stay strong, for the sake of the victims, for the sake of justice. Finally, after hours of interrogation, I gave the signal. I excused myself from the table and went to the restroom, where I met with the waiting detectives. They reviewed the recording, confirmed that they had enough evidence to make an arrest, and prepared to move in. I took a deep breath, steeled my nerves, and returned to the dining room. My grandfather was waiting for me, a smug smile on his face. He thought he had won. He thought he had manipulated me, controlled me, used me to his advantage. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. I sat down at the table, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "I know everything." The smile vanished from his face. His eyes widened in shock. He knew that the game was up. Before he could react, the detective stormed into the room, guns drawn. "Arthur Davenport, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit unlawful termination, fraud, and obstruction of justice." My grandfather sat there, frozen in disbelief, as the detectives placed him in handcuffs and led him away. As he was being escorted out of the restaurant, he turned to me, his eyes filled with rage and betrayal. "You haven't won, Amelia," he snarled. "This isn't over. You've made a powerful enemy today." I simply smiled. "No, grandfather," I said. "You made a powerful enemy a long time ago. You just didn't realize it until now. They tried to end me, but instead, I ended them. They tried to end me, but instead, I ended them." The courtroom was packed, a sea of faces, some sympathetic, some hostile, all waiting to witness the final act. My grandfather sat at the defendant's table, his face a mask of defiance, but I could see the fear lurking in his eyes. The trial was a brutal affair, a relentless onslaught of evidence and testimony that exposed the full extent of his crimes. The prosecution presented the forged documents, the hidden accounts, the recorded conversations, the testimony of witnesses who had been silenced for years, now emboldened to speak the truth. My grandfather's lawyers fought back fiercely, attempting to discredit the evidence, to attack my character, to paint me as a vengeful, unstable woman seeking to destroy her family. But their efforts were futile. The truth was too powerful, too undeniable. I took the stand, my voice clear and unwavering, and I recounted my story, the story of betrayal, manipulation, and resilience. I spoke of the pain they had inflicted, the damage they had caused, but also of my determination to overcome, to reclaim my life, to protect my daughter. The jury listened intently, their faces etched with emotion, and when I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The closing arguments were a formality. The outcome was inevitable. After deliberating for only a few hours, the jury returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. My grandfather sat there, stunned, his face crumbling as the reality of his situation sunk in. He was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. His empire was dismantled, his wealth confiscated, his reputation destroyed. He had lost everything. As he was led away, he turned to me one last time, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. "You'll regret this, Amelia," he hissed. "This isn't over." I simply smiled. "It is for me," I said. "I'm finally free." The fallout was immense. My family was ostracized, their social standing ruined, their businesses boycotted. My husband, finally understanding the full scope of my family's actions, filed for divorce, unable to reconcile with the knowledge of their deceit. It was a painful chapter, but I knew it was necessary. I needed to cut all ties to that toxic world, to create a new life for myself and my daughter. I sold the family home, donated a portion of the recovered assets to charities supporting victims of financial crimes, and moved to a new city, far away from the shadows of my past. I started a new business, a consulting firm dedicated to helping individuals and families protect themselves from financial abuse. I poured my energy into my work, finding purpose and fulfillment in helping others avoid the pain and suffering I had endured. My daughter thrived in her new environment, making friends, excelling in school, and growing into a strong, independent young woman. We built a new life together, a life filled with love, laughter, and security. Years passed. The wounds began to heal. The memories faded, but the lessons remained. I learned the importance of trusting my instincts, of standing up for myself, of fighting for what is right. I learned that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure, and that even the most formidable enemies can be brought down. One day, I received a letter from my grandfather. He was dying, he wrote, and he wanted to make amends. He confessed to his crimes, expressed remorse for his actions, and begged for my forgiveness. I hesitated. Could I forgive a man who had caused so much pain, who had tried to destroy my life? After much reflection, I decided to visit him. I found him frail and weak, a shadow of the man he once was. He looked at me with pleading eyes, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said. "I know I can never undo what I've done, but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I looked at him, at the broken, defeated man before me, and I realized that he had already paid the ultimate price. He had lost everything, his wealth, his power, his family, his freedom, and now, his life. I took his hand, and I said, "I forgive you, grandfather." A single tear rolled down his cheek. He closed his eyes, and he was gone. The news of his demise brought a sense of closure, a final release from the grip of the past. I had faced my demons, conquered my fears, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.